thing from another world. This is the spot where it was first seen, and these are the first people who saw the thing. How did it get here? Where did it come from? What is it?
That thing's alive, sir. I saw it, I shot at it, I hit it, I know it. Nothing happened. It just kept coming at me, making a noise like a cat mewing. Captain, it was awful. If you could have seen those hands and those eyes. Captain, you've got to do something about it. You've got.
Is it human or inhuman? Earthly or unearthly? Baffling questions, astounding questions that not even the world's greatest scientific minds can answer.
Gentlemen, do you realize what we've found? A being from another world, as different from us as one pole from the other. If we can only communicate with it.
See? What happened, Doctor?
In the greenhouse, I was working. I couldn't see.
Yeah.
Then a blast of cold air, and I heard Olson scream.
Come here. Get in the corner. Now hold this in front of you. Stay by the light switch.
1.9. Needles hit the top.
Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Psychologists will tell you that the old phrase, first impressions are correct. They are correct. That's what psychologists will tell you. You meet someone and the first impression you have of that person usually turns out to be the correct impression. That's the kind of person you're dealing with, is the impression they gave you initially. And I think that is the case potentially with this extraterrestrial non-human intelligence presence. I personally, as everyone knows, believe that these beings come from other worlds. And I think that's the case in this situation as well. I think the first impression that we had about these people, about these beings, whatever they are, wherever they're from, was correct. And I think it's all starting to come very clear as time goes on. And what I'm talking about here is how Hollywood in the 1950s basically portrayed these alien creatures whenever they made movies. A lot of movies throughout the 1950s portrayed them in not in a good sense for the most part, I would say. It was something to be concerned about. And you can understand because the first impression basically, okay, you look at 1947 when the UFOs exploded, UFO sightings exploded. Everyone was seeing flying saucers starting in 1947. And before that, there was the 1897 great airship mystery where a lot of people across the world were seeing strange airships, and then they disappeared and nobody really talked about these UFOs for a long time. Now, they would appear in fiction like The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells and things like that. But for the most part, nobody was talking about them. And then 1947 rolls around and everyone's seeing flying saucers. It's in the newspapers. A lot of local newspapers reported on local sightings. There was the Pentagon in 1952. There was sightings over Washington, D.C., over the Pentagon, over the White House. I mean, they were in the newspaper a lot, but nobody knew what they wore. There was no answer with regard to where they came from or what they want or who was operating them, and we never got any real answers. It's like they just showed up. We don't care if you see us, and we're here, and that's it. That's pretty much what it was like. It was like a show of force in 1947, and they were around, and they never presented themselves. They never landed, as far as anyone knows, and to let us know that they're here and don't worry about it. We're just checking out your planet. They never did anything like that whatsoever. So the first impression that you see in movies throughout the 1950s was probably correct. And I'm going to show you why I believe that it's correct. We're going to go through, I picked 9 different movies that were released throughout the 1950s. And you could see the context of these movies, the ideas in these movies, they seem to be what we're talking about today. Now, as these science fiction movies over the decades, they became more sophisticated, like with 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968, of course, right? Movies became more sophisticated over time with regard to portraying alien creatures, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., and all that kind of stuff. But in the 1950s, the first impression was these things, they're not even introducing themselves. Who are they? And they're probably here. They're probably up to no good. And that first impression might be correct. And so I'm going to talk about some of the movies that where these things were broached, where these concepts were presented, and now a lot of these concepts, we're talking about them now in reality. So let's go through some of them. We start off basically in 1951. There were two movies that were released that year. That were, this is 4 years after people start seeing flying saucers. So there was two pretty big movies that came out that year. One of them was The Thing from Another World, and what happens in that movie? Well, there's a group of scientists holed up in some research center up in the Arctic, and they track something that comes down from the sky. They think it's unusual, and they contact the Air Force. The Air Force joins them at their compound in the Arctic, and then they all fly out to this spot where this object came down, and there's a flying saucer buried in the ice. You have to wonder, like people that were involved in the Roswell crash, you would have to imagine that some of those people, the people that were told to shut up, they had to be interested in this. Some of them for sure had to go to the movies to go see that when it came out, The Thing from Another World. This most certainly had to intrigue them. And you have to also wonder, what was the secrecy group at the time thinking about all of this? The Majestic 12, what were they thinking about this? But anyway, it's interesting. They find this flying saucer, crashed in the ice, and they try to get it out. They try to heat it out, basically. They try to melt the ice, but it causes the flying saucer to explode into a billion pieces. But there's a being left there. They find a being, they take it, they chop it out in a block of ice. They load it onto the plane, and they take it back to that research center, the research compound in the Arctic, and then it accidentally gets melted. And this being's alive, and it's made. It's a humanoid, but it's a vegetable kind of creature, just like a intelligent carrot, as they talk about in the movie. But the problem is that it has the ability to reproduce itself. There's seeds actually inside its fingernails, inside its claws, and apparently the plan turns out to be that it's planning to conquer the world, and it lives off human blood. So it was nasty. I mean, it was again, first impression. I mean, we talk about what's going on today. We're talking about cattle mutilations, potential human mutilations, right? Which it seems to be taboo in the UFO community, but it seems to be something that people have heard about or read about or were told about. Is that something that's going on? There's disappearances all the time. Are they here for that kind of reason? That's something that people are talking about still today. Again, you have Hollywood starting to make these movies in the early 1950s, like The Thing from Another World. Actually, that was based on a novella that was published in the 1930s. So when the UFO craze, the flying saucer craze is ongoing, Hollywood's like, okay, we need to start making movies and capitalize on this. So they get the screenwriters, they have them adapt these some of these short stories. Like it was based on a short story called Who Goes There that was published in 1938. By John Campbell, and so they have them modify it, bring it up to date, throw in a flying saucer, and they change the story, they change the plot line a lot. Actually, the more faithful plot was actually adapted by John Carpenter in the 1982 remake of The Thing. That was more like the original short story from the 1930s, but they brought it up to date. They create the masterminds behind the screenplay, behind the story. They modified it, they adapted it, and they turned it into this, connect it with the flying saucer craze that was ongoing for the last several years, right? There seems like there's correlations. Like when you look at all the plot lines of these movies from the 1950s, the first impressions basically of this apparent alien presence. This is what people were thinking. This is what people with imaginations were dreaming up in the screenplays for these movies. So you have The Thing from Another World. You have basically a creature apparently here to conquer the world and drink our blood and grow a whole bunch of other creatures just like it and take us over. And then in the same year, there's another movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. And in this movie, an alien, looks just like a human being, shows up with a giant robot, and basically the movie is a warning to the human race that if you continue down this path of nuclear proliferation, well, guess what? We're going to obliterate you. We're going to destroy your entire race because we're not going to deal with this. We live in peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Drew Pearson. We bring you this special radio television broadcast in order to give you the very latest information on an amazing phenomenon, the arrival of a space ship in Washington. The Army has taken every precaution to meet any emergency which may develop. Just a minute, ladies and gentlemen, I think something is happening.
I came here to give you these facts. But if you threaten to extend your violence, this earth of yours will be reduced to a burned out cinder.
But he's a robot. Without you, what could he do?
There's no limit to what he could do. He could destroy the Earth.
All vehicles, close in. Let's go.
And doesn't that correlate with things that happen later on? Basically, you have flying saucers showing up over nuclear missile silos, shutting missiles down, activating them. They have, even as far back as 1947, you have UFOs hovering over Oak Ridge Laboratory in Tennessee, where they're experimenting and studying atomic energy. So you have that. You can see the correlations. Again, the first impressions seem to be correct here. Then you have another movie, It Came from Outer Space. In this movie, what looks like a meteor crashes in the desert outside of some sleepy Arizona town, and the first person that shows up to it is this astronomer who has a big imagination, but he happens to see that it's some sort of a spacecraft that crashed, and then the next thing he knows, there's a big landslide, and this thing gets covered up by rocks, and nobody could see it, and he can't get anyone to believe him that there's actually some kind of a craft buried there in this crater, and it couldn't be man-made. It had to be something from someplace else. Nobody believes him. They all say it's a meteor. Doesn't that sound familiar? Everyone's telling him it's a meteor, even though this guy knows for certain that it's not. And what happens in that case? There's alien beings there. They crash land, and they're trying to repair their ship. And they have the ability to make themselves look like human beings. In reality, they look like these... I guess they're called xenomorphs with the one big eyeball. They look like very strange. Traipsing around, but they could make themselves look like human beings, and if you get in their way while they're making their repairs, they're going to kill you. So that was It Came from Outer Space, and that was actually, by the way, released in 3D.
Yes, it came from outer space to fill the world with terror, to bring you unforgettable suspense. What was it? Where did it come from? Who were the all-powerful creatures it brought from outer space? And what did they want on Earth? You can learn the amazing answer only when you see the most thrilling picture in years. It came from outer space. In the astonishing realism of 3 dimension, with objects coming right out of the screen, so real they almost touch you.
And then there's Invaders from Mars. In Invaders from Mars, there's an alien invasion, of course, this time with Martians, these bug-eyed creatures, big eyes, being controlled by some kind of a other creature with a bigger head, with a bigger brain in its skull, and they have the ability to put implants into people, into human beings, and control their minds as they proceed to try to take over the world. Doesn't that sound familiar? We talk about alien implants. It was something that we started learning about years later through alien abduction situations where people get abducted, and then sometimes there are implants found in them. They have implants in them. That was the subject of Jeremy Corbell's documentary, Patient 17, with the late Dr. Roger Lear, removing implants from people. But here in 1953, here's a movie talking about implants, aliens coming down and putting implants in people and controlling them that way as they take over the world.
Invaders from Mars. He saw them land from outer space. He saw them capture innocent people only to destroy. Father turned against son. People changed into strange, weird animals. A general of the army becomes a saboteur. Trusted police turned into arsonists. The boy's parents changed into killers.
But nobody's getting anywhere out there. Nobody can locate anything. Anybody. The Martians. We've got to start the...
Invaders from Mars, capturing humans at will for their own sinister purposes, turning them into diabolical instruments of destruction. Invaders from Mars, weird, fantastic beings of a superintelligence, ruling a race of synthetic humans and pitting them against mankind's dream to conquer the universe.
Come on, step on it. Search every tunnel. We gotta find Ronaldo and the kid. When the colonel gives the signal, get back here on the double.
Okay, and then what's another movie here? The next one, War of the Worlds from 1953, based on H.G. Wells' 1896 novel. Now that one there, basically, but they updated it. Now in the H.G. Wells version, the craft that showed up, they came down in some sort of a big ball, and the things that came out of it, they walked around on the ground. They didn't fly. They walked around on the ground as they proceeded to destroy the planet. And in War of the Worlds, the movie version, of course, they're flying objects. They're similar. They're something like flying saucers, but not quite. And they're just there to destroy us. They don't even. Basically, it's showing us what could happen. That movie there, The War of the Worlds, is basically showing us that if the aliens really wanted to, this is something that they could do if they really wanted to, and they probably could, obviously, if they wanted to do something like that. I'm sure that they have the technology to do something like that, and it would take a miracle for us to stop it. And in that movie, actually, it does take a miracle, because as just in the H.G. Wells novel of War of the Worlds, basically what stops them, it's not the human race, it's bacteria here that their bodies just weren't used to. So it would take a miracle, and that's basically what that movie informs us of.
This could be the beginning of the end for the human race. For what men first thought were meteors or the often ridiculed flying saucers are in reality the flaming vanguard of the invasion from Mars.
Looks like they're gonna come out of that gully pretty soon. We'll have to rush our defenses to be ready when they do.
The guard can need plenty of reinforcements.
We'll get them. Lieutenant! Look!
They slash across country like scythes, wiping out everything that's trying to get away from them.
That explains why communication is cut the moment their machines begin moving.
Montreal's blacked out. Nothing more's come through.
Same thing that happened on the Pacific coast. Anything from them yet?
No, Mr. Secretary. We've had nothing from San Francisco for over 5 hours.
The nations of the world mobilize their armed might, rushing to defend the Earth against the unknown weapons of the super race from the Red Planet. Is there nothing that can stop the Martian death machines?
Guns, tanks, bombs. They're like toys against them. We know now that we can't beat their machine. We've got to beat them.
All over the world, human beings cower before the onslaught of these unearthly enemies, whom no one has ever seen. Panic that sweeps around the globe as the great masses of mankind flee blindly in a headlong stampede of hysteria.
And then another one here, a similar one, Earth versus the Flying Saucers. That was from 1956. It featured the special effects, the stop motion effects of Ray Harryhausen. Basically, it was based on this book here by Donald Kehoe. It was, if you read the credits in the opening titles, it says suggested by Flying Saucers from Outer Space by Major Donald Kehoe. Of course, this book here was published in 1953, and this, one of the makers of Earth versus the Flying Saucers, they latched onto the idea that was featured in here, that there was this, what if there's this ancient civilization out there that their planet is dying and they need to come to another planet. They're here to colonize. That was an idea that was presented in this book. Actually, there was a intelligence officer that provided Kehoe that speculative concept, and then the makers of Earth versus the Flying Saucers decided to focus on that they're here to take over the world, and they're going to use technology that exceeds anything that we have, and they could just blow us up and take over. So that's again, you can see the correlations. We're still talking about this kind of stuff.
Flying saucers have invaded our planet. Washington, London, Paris, Moscow are key targets. The whole world is under attack. Can it survive?
The survivors of a disintegrated solar system. At this moment, the remainder of our fleet is circling your globe.
What do you want with me?
Arrange for your world leaders to confer with us in the city of Washington.
They set up an electronic screen. The artillery doesn't penetrate.
Never before has the screen reached such heights of excitement. Breathtaking spectacle. Hair-raising terror. See the saucer men's high-frequency disintegrators. See flying saucers travel thousands of miles in seconds. See great cities leveled by flying saucer monsters.
Ross, look.
The same kind of thing that's watched us since the beginning of the project.
People of Earth, attention. People of Earth, attention. This is a voice speaking to you from thousands of miles beyond your planet.
They're coming down to take over. They made that clear to us in the saucer.
best of our knowledge, my wife and I are the only ones left alive.
And then, of course, there was the very frightening movie from 1956, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which taken us over, replacing human beings with they look just like us. I was just talking about this in the previous podcast. I mean, the concept. It's not the same thing, of course. These are seed pods from outer space that grow and have the ability, if they're nearby you, they can grow into a being that looks just like you, and then you just shrivel away and they take over. Isn't that very similar to this hybridization program that some people believe is going on right now? Again, if you look at the correlations, again, the human race, I believe, is smart. They do. First impressions are correct a lot of times, right? They are correct. And I think the impression that people in Hollywood, when they were making these movies back in the 50s, that was their first impression. Look at these beings. They don't seem like they're here in peace. They're not showing up and meeting with us and telling us, hey, don't worry about our presence. Just don't mind us. We're here to check you out. We're not here to cause any trouble. There was nothing like that, right? Instead, it's all secretive. Some people see them and then they disappear. The flying saucers disappear. So that's why they had this. That's why these movies from the 1950s had the concepts, offered this concepts that they did, because of reasons like this. The first impressions wasn't good.
But will you tell these fools I'm not crazy? Make them listen to me before it's too late. Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
They come from another world, spawned in the light years of space, unleashed to take over the bodies and souls of the people of our planet, bringing a new dimension in terror to the giant super scope screen.
Whatever intelligence or instinct it is that can govern the forming of human flesh and blood out of thin air is fantastically powerful, beyond any comprehension.
A cursed, dreadful, malevolent thing was happening to those he loved.
This isn't just an ordinary body, is it? I never saw one like it. It looks unused.
The sensational star discovery of The View from Pompey's Head. And now an undreamed of horror makes her life and love a vortex of fear.
Jack!
Miles, where do they come from?
I don't know. Suddenly, while you're asleep, they'll absorb your minds, your memories. I don't want any part of it. You're forgetting something, Miles. What's that? You have no choice.
From city to city, an incredible hysterical panic spreads. As the unimaginable becomes real, the impossible becomes true.
Stop and listen! Stop and listen to me! Listen! Listen! Listen to me! They're not human! Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
And here's another one, the Crawling Eye, or AKA it was called the Trollenberg Terror in the United Kingdom. It was actually made in Britain. And in this movie, that there were alien beings hiding out in a cloud on top of a fictional mountain somewhere in Europe. And they're apparently doing some sort of a climatization program to change the climate of the Earth, right? So that makes it livable for them. They needed to make it cold so that would be more suitable for them. And anybody who went near they were hiding inside this cloud. If you went near it, they would rip your head off. And basically these creatures, they were tentacled beings with one eye again. But again, isn't it similar to some of the concepts that people are talking about today?
This alarm fills the night with terror, for high on a mountainside, a mysterious fear such as no human being has ever seen before.
Where there are mountains, there are always clouds.
But this one remains static. On the side of the Trollenberg, it never moves.
Freak of nature.
A radioactive freak of nature?
It strikes without warning, wreaking death and destruction too horrible to behold. A force of evil that tortures its victims and hurls them mercilessly to the brink of murder and madness. What is it? And what does it crave, this creeping horror that hungers and thrives on human flesh, while it inhabits its own silent world that no man can penetrate? No one is safe from its spell of destruction, a cold, hypnotic stare striking fear into the hearts of all, creating a frenzied nightmare for those who behold it.
The cloud is splitting up.
Splitting up?
There are 4 of them now, and all moving this way.
And then finally, there's one called Invisible Invaders. That was from 1959. Like that one there, the title says it all. I mean, okay, not only are we here to take over the world, but guess what? We can make ourselves invisible and you can't see us. So that was a concept that wasn't there. And we're just talking about invisible beings here in Vegas for the past year, right? Or actually the past couple of months, because we realized what was apparently going on there.
Within 3 days, the dead will destroy all the living. I am from another planet, outside your galaxy.
I'm sorry, I just don't understand.
Unless Earth surrenders in 24 hours, we will begin a mass invasion. We are invisible. We are invisible, Adam Penner. You cannot see us.
From outer space come the invisible invaders, living dead men threatening to destroy all life on Earth.
So all of this stuff, the first impression is usually correct. And you look back at some of these movies in the 1950s and you look at the concepts and you can see how it correlates with what we're talking about now. Those people, the brains behind these screenplays and these movies and these stories that these movies are based on, they actually, this was their first impression. What else are we to think? They don't seem like they're friendly. No, some people see them and then if they talk about it, they're deemed crazy. So people are afraid to talk about it. Obviously these beings, they're here for purposes that they don't want to share with us. So that's the first impression that they gave. So the human race, just like a psychologist will tell you, right? When somebody, you meet someone for the first time, you get a first impression. Well, I think that's the case. That's what we're seeing out of these 1950s science fiction movies. There was a first impression given and it wasn't a good one. And now we're still talking about some of these concepts that were introduced in a lot of these movies. We're talking about them today potentially real, because the people who had imaginations that made these movies, that created the screenplays for them, that's they were actually sitting down. Okay, let me think about this situation. What are we dealing with here? Okay, I guess this is the way I gotta go, because this is what else could it be? The first impression, it's not good. So that's what I think. I think basically what's happening here is potentially we could say that life is imitating art in a way, but I think even it'd be better to say that what really happened is that, or really is happening here, is that the first impression that we had of these people, these creatures, whatever they are from another world, it wasn't too good. And a lot of these things we're talking about today. In fact, let me just sum it up like this. It says basically, so the aliens show up to, if you were to put all of these movies and think about it, basically this is what I learned from it. Basically this is that the aliens show up to conquer the world, and they use the human race as a food supply by drinking their blood, and they're also here to warn us about expanding our nuclear capabilities, because if we continue down that path, they'll obliterate us. The aliens sometimes crash in objects that look like meteors, and you better steer clear while they make repairs, or they might kill you. As they conquer us, aliens have the ability to take over the minds of human beings by putting implants into their brains, and if aliens actually wanted to destroy the human race with violence, they could easily do so, and it would take a miracle to prevent it. The aliens are an ancient civilization from a dying planet, and they're here to colonize whether we like it or not. Also, aliens can slowly absorb the human race by replacing us with beings that look just like us. And if you find an alien hiding spot where an apparent civilized climatization program is underway, stay away or they'll rip you apart. And finally, if that wasn't enough, aliens have the ability to render themselves invisible just in the event you thought you had a chance to fight back. So that's the situation, folks. That's summing up those 9 movies that I just presented here, and the concepts contained within them. And those concepts, as you can see, are things that we're talking about right now. Now, again, like I said, a lot of the movies that came later on, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and among many others. Sometimes there are ones like Independence Day, which are basically in the 1990s that comes out, and it's what that is just a remake of movies like Earth versus the Flying Saucers or War of the Worlds. Just except they wanted to show off the new CGI technology they had at the time to make something really spectacular. But basically it was just a reboot of those older ones. It was nothing new. And then every now and then you get something like Predator from the 80s, which shows aliens using cloaking technology. But again, that was already covered in 1959 with the release of Invisible Invaders. So the initial impression made by these visitors after 1947, by 1951, when these movies started getting released, this is what they were thinking at the time, that it couldn't be good, right? They're not showing up and talking to us and telling us they're here on friendly terms. No, they're just doing their own thing, and they don't care what we do or what we think. And like I said, psychologists will tell you first impressions are usually right. Okay, moving on, I want to talk about, in the previous show, I made a presentation and about potential other alien creatures that you could see in the Vegas video, but I might be wrong about the one analysis that I provided, where I said I believe there was one hiding in the background. It actually might be a side mirror on a piece of heavy equipment. And I don't know that for sure, but there was a couple of people that pointed that out to me online, and I want to just play this little quick presentation that I put together earlier to explain everything. Okay, now in yesterday's podcast, in the previous podcast that I uploaded, I was talking about the potentiality of an alien being hiding back there in the background with the heavy equipment. And I provided a close-up there. I'm pointing at it right now. I thought it was hiding behind a window there, but I could be wrong. There has been a couple of 2 or 3 different followers have pointed out that I might be looking at a side mirror on some of the on one of the heavy equipment that's parked back there on one of the objects, and they might be right, Steve. I thought what I was because that thing disappears when the creature, the background creature, approaches them. You can't see that thing anymore, and I thought that's what we were looking at, that there could be a creature back there. But apparently I might be off my rocker. as you can see in this in the analysis from yesterday, right now I'm just circling that area because you cannot no longer see that that square window like area where I believed that there was a creature there, but I could be wrong. Maybe what happened here? Maybe the creature that's approaching them was hiding someplace else, and now it's just blocking it out. I didn't consider that when I did that analysis yesterday, so I might be wrong there, folks. But I don't know. I just don't know for sure. In a few seconds here, I'm going to show you there are other side mirrors on that you could identify for certain. And maybe that's what I was looking at, but here right now we're seeing that creature step toward them and causing them to back out of the yard. You can see its head. There it comes. Yep, there it's in the view there. So maybe that was in the way of the other thing. So I'm not sure about that aspect of my analysis from the previous show. And here I'm going to show you. Yeah, there's right there. That's a side mirror that's circled on a something, and then there's another side mirror that I circled there, and then you have to wonder, is this a side mirror too? Was I off my rocker? Maybe, but I don't think I'm off my rocker with regard to this aspect of the analysis from the previous show. This is the center of their property where they're filming, and this is after they were chased out of the yard, and they started filming again. This is before they zoomed in, right when they start filming again, and they open the gate and they're examining the backyard. Looks like an alien head to me, folks, poking its nose out there. Maybe a debunker will try to tell us it's some mutated groundhog it's in that condition because of from the nuclear testing that they did out in Nevada back in the 50s. Maybe that's what they'll tell us. But to me, right there, I think we could be looking at the head of a gray. But I just don't know for sure. We can't say for sure. We're not going to be able to prove probably anything hiding out in the background because the video, when you try to zoom in on this stuff, it gets really, the compression, the pixelation. There's just so many issues. But to me, looks pretty clear. I think that we're looking at potentially a gray alien being, and it moves its head there a little bit. But there's more help on the way. I have received some Brett from Australia. He's a graphic artist with 30 plus years of experience. He's going to play around with all of this stuff in Photoshop, and he's going to see if he could identify any more critters hiding back there in the equipment. We know they're there, right? We all know they're there because we have scientific evidence now that shows that there's one that shows up behind the fence and one that shows up chasing the people out of the yard. Now, this was another little thing I was looking at. As they're getting chased out of the yard, there looks like there's some action going on in this little segment here. This is the same area that later on we see the little gray alien poking up. I don't know. It looks like there could be some movement there. Is there something there? Is this just pareidolia? Am I off my rocker on this one? Maybe I am. I don't know. There could be something here. I'm not exactly sure. But that might be an area that we could look at. Or maybe, other people that examine this stuff are going to take a look at as time goes on. But I don't know. It looks really strange for a few brief seconds there. It could be a face looking back at us. But again, we're never going to be able to prove all of this stuff. We could prove the fence creature scientifically, and we could prove that there was most certainly something that approached them that caused them to run out of the yard. But I don't know what I'm seeing here. It looks like there could be some action going on here. I don't know. Somebody with a better system of examining these things, because I'm a novice when it comes to these kind of things. Maybe Brett from Australia will figure it out. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's something. Maybe Scott Roeder will see it at some point and check it out. Maybe it's something. Maybe it's nothing. I don't know. Maybe somebody looking at this right now will tell us what it is. But we know for sure, no matter what the case, that there most certainly were beings in the backyard, as we all know. I mean, here's this little presentation that Scott Roeder put together. You have the creature approaching them. He has the lines going around it so you can see it. And he also has lines going around the creature that shows up behind the fence. So we know that there was something there, no question about it. And we have the evidence now, scientifically proven. It's still not being accepted, as we know, by a lot of people, including some people in the UFO community. There are others who have accepted it and understand that this does prove that something very strange was going on in Las Vegas last year, May 30th and May 1st, for the Kenmore family. And here we go again with this. I mean, again, we have this evidence. See, a lot of this stuff that I'm showing on here, a lot of people, when they saw the News Nation report on this, but they didn't get this kind of examination, this kind of analysis, this kind of in-your-face proof. I mean, right here, I have it on a loop here, and I have I have the brightness turned up so we can get a better look at it as it's, the face is coming in and off the screen there. And then, of course, I did the looping video with the alien face, the six frames. I mean, there you go, folks. There you have it. That's an alien being. That's an alien creature. No doubt about it. No question about it whatsoever. There was something in the yard. This is exactly what was described by the family members, so we also have that to hang our hat on. Okay, so one other thing I want to talk about too. Like you saw that, so that's where we are with that. But I received a comment from one of my followers on YouTube. This was user FI4JK7GZ9F. And this was the comment that he gave me. He says, News Nation and Ross Coulthart will work together with evidence expert Scott Roeder. I don't believe Jeremy Corbell did have time to deep dive into the Las Vegas case. I give him the benefit of the doubt 100%. Let's wait until Scott Roeder was on Reality Check News Nation with investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp will then also look into it, that's for sure. So what he's talking about here, what this follower is talking about, is basically in a podcast that I did 2 podcasts ago when I was talking about Jeremy Corbell. He made a statement saying that stuff like the Vegas alien and also the Nazca mummies are those kind of stories are harmful to the UFO community. And I didn't appreciate that statement. For one thing, you have American scientists looking at those Peru mummies, those Peru corpses, these tridactyl creatures, and they're saying the same thing that those Mexican scientists are saying, that they're not humans. They're humanoid, but they're not humans. So I don't know. We have American scientists now saying this. So why is that harmful? I don't understand why that's harmful. And why would it be harmful to try to talk about this Vegas alien stuff? I don't understand that either. I mean, based on the research that Scott Roeder, the analysis from Scott Roeder, if I just believe that it's possible that Corbell and among other people in the UFO community just haven't had a chance to see Scott Roeder's complete analysis, which was not presented during that News Nation segment recently. So I think that is an issue, and I actually responded to this to that post. I wrote this. I said, yeah, that's what I think too. The issue I have is this. If you're going to comment on something like this, you really need to make sure you know exactly what you're commenting on. Recently, I did a deep dive on the Kingman UFO incident because of the declassified Mellon texts where Kingman was discussed. It took me days to gather all of the research for that episode from various different sources. I could have half-assed it and provided a brief summary, but that would have been a disservice to the subject. Jeremy apparently didn't really do a deep dive into the Vegas alien evidence and instead hung his hat on the analysis of a guy who didn't use a scientific method in reaching his shadow conclusion. It was basically a glorified opinion derived by eyeballing the video and then dolling it up with a CGI recreation that supports his hypothesis. That's not science. Roeder and Louis Castillo used top-of-the-grade AI motion and vectoring software to reach their various conclusions of what's occurring in the video. They use the same scientific method they use when recreating various crime scene reconstructions that are used in court presentations. What seems to be getting missed here by Corbell and some others in the UFO community who are commenting on this is the following. 1. For 6 frames in the video, the face of an alien being can be seen above the fence that matches the description supplied by 3 witnesses. 2. In the area above the fence where the being appears, 66% of the pixels that should have been captured by the cell phone are missing. There is no known scientific reason for this to have happened. 3. The creature that appears in the background that scares the 3 family members out of the yard is getting completely ignored by the skeptics, probably because they know they can't explain it. For a handful of frames, it is clear that some unnatural, upright humanoid being moves toward the Kenmores. There's no doubt about it. 4. Proponents of the "it's a shadow above the fence" explanation don't seem to understand that a shadow just can't be projected onto thin air. And then 5, skeptics are not considering the totality of the evidence, including the fact that the meteor made a weird sound as it came down, that the meteor in long-wave infrared showed no heat signal, that a neighbor of the Kenmores reported that when the object landed, his TV acted up, lights in his house were blinking on and off, and his security cameras shut down. That a woman who watched the object fall over Vegas from her position in Arizona observed 2 star-like UFOs show up and move around the area where the object fell for about an hour. That the family was so scared they called 911. That the government is still interested and installed cameras on their home. That the family during the months after the event experienced poltergeist activity in their home, etc., and so on and so on and so forth. And that's all I really need to say about that. So there you go, folks. That's all I have to really say about that for now. We do have, other people are going to start looking at this. From what I understand, there's going to be more YouTube channels. They're going to be having Scott Roeder on to talk about this evidence, and so more and more people will be learning about it. I'm excited about that. That's what we need. Like I stated when we first started talking about it, the first week of this, I said it's going to take time, but it's going to bleed out slowly. People will start seeing the evidence. It'll be, they'll see a more complete version of Scott's analysis had they gone to his YouTube channel, right? They could have watched the whole thing and they would have a better idea. They would know that there was most certainly something there. And then you have to look at the totality of the evidence. If this was to go to a court of law, that you'd be able to prove the presence of an alien civilization here on this planet. That's what I believe. But anyway, there's still work to be done here, and I'm looking forward to more analysis on this. It's great. It's a great time to be alive. We have the evidence now. Like I said many times before, it's there. And it's whether you want to accept it or not, that's up to you. I mean, it's scientific proof as far as I'm concerned. But I believe it's possible that Corbell just didn't see the full thing, didn't see the full analysis. I think when people like him, among other people, other big names within the UFO community, when they finally do see it and they digest it and they think about it, they'll realize, yep, that's it. It's a done deal. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.